Part 129. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1282. There is a square gap of about 15 centimeters above the head of the hanging cage, but this is used for delivering food. Lily once took the opportunity to observe when someone was delivering food. Except for the gap, other places were sealed and it was solid, and it was obvious that her body could not escape from such a small place. Even though the bone shrinking technique existed in the 9-Yang manual, the time was too short. Within a year and a half, she didn't want to use this method at all, so the escape channel above her head had been rejected by Lily. She huddled in the cage, and the cage was lowered with a creaking sound. The people in the cage had their heads buried in their chests. They were all obviously frightened to the extreme, but they did not dare to open their mouths and make a sound at all. The female voice was still introducing people. The hunter who came this time was a woman in her 40s. She was wrapped in a bright red long coat that reached her ankles, wrapping her whole body tightly. Shi Zheng stared at the person in the cage with critical eyes. "Mrs. Mary, there must be something you want here." The woman who spoke was wearing a tempting and revealing bunny girl's clothes. As she spoke, she twisted her waist and walked towards the iron cage, and the white rabbit tail behind her butt swayed. Lily's hand holding her head suddenly became tense. The iron cage was opened, and two big men came over. First, they grabbed a woman who was trying to hide away from the cage and dragged her out. The woman's hair was pulled. Although she struggled desperately, a woman who often doesn't eat or drink, how strong is she? It was obvious that she had been trained to do this. Her scalp was pulled so hard that her facial features were somewhat deformed. She rolled her stiff eyes twice and grabbed the iron cage with both hands, but she was no match for the man's strength. Was dragged out. The moment she was dragged out, the woman finally couldn't bear the pressure in her heart. The pain of being on the verge of death made her suddenly scream. "Please forgive me, please forgive me," she shouted like crazy. The tears flowed quickly and quickly, leaving 2 tear stains on her originally dirty cheeks. But in this place, tears and begging had no effect at all, and the woman's shrill cries continued to echo in the secret room. Her desperate struggle obviously attracted the interested attention of the woman called Mrs. Mary. Her lips covered with bright red lipstick bit her lips and a smile appeared on her face. Lily's eyes narrowed when she saw the woman being dragged out of the cage. Logically speaking, the person who came this time should be a middle-aged man with a gloomy face, but he was temporarily replaced by this Mrs. Mary who was very scary in the original owner's impression, and the person chosen was not her, but another woman. Lily immediately suspected that the original owner had some confusion in his memory due to extreme fear, misremembering the order in which she herself was killed. This Mrs. Mary seems to be a frequent visitor here, because the beautiful woman dressed as a bunny girl did not introduce her to the rules here, nor did she introduce her to the prey identity in the cage. She chose the prey from this woman. Her demeanor showed that she was no stranger to this kind of activity. "Don't kill me, don't kill me." The captured woman struggled and screamed desperately, her teeth clenching. She was still ruthlessly stripped of her clothes that looked like dried pickles. The woman was like a sheep, about to be thrown into the bathing pool. Mrs. Mary became more and more excited. The woman seemed to realize that she was about to die. Her lips trembled and her eyes glanced towards the iron cage. Suddenly she seemed to have thought of something and her eyes lit up. "Please don't kill me, don't kill me. There is someone in the cage who is very active. She eats a lot every day. Kill her, kill her." Her eyes were fixed on Lily, with a look of ecstasy on her face. Although everyone who enters the cage knows that he will die sooner or later after entering this place, death can be divided into early death and late death, and death is 1 day later. Just a little more chance of survival, especially after seeing how painful the death of those who were tortured and killed was. Everyone is more afraid of death. At this time, the woman's sudden accusation made several people present laugh. These people have been here for a long time, and this is not the first time this has happened. In fact, in the eyes of these people, seeing the ugly appearance of these ants-like people in death is undoubtedly a very pleasant thing. Looking at these prey, they are so frightened that they want to drag others into the water to die. The ugliness of human nature can be seen at this time. The waiter looked at Lily. Before, she was crowded in a crowd of people, and it was really hard to tell whether she was strong or not. But now that she was pointed out, the bunny girl rolled her eyes and ordered, "Pull her out too." The woman who had spoken before suddenly burst into tears as if she was relieved. The two big men holding her threw her to the ground like a pile of mud. They walked to the cage and bent over to reach out to pull Lily in the cage. Lily was sitting in the corner of the cage. When she saw the big man reaching out to pull her, she was half pushed and half pulled out of the cage by the big man. The bunny girl came over and compared Lily's dirty and smelly clothes. She sprayed an unknown perfume on her body, and the smell seemed a bit cloying. She took a closer look at Lily and covered her nose with her hands in disgust. Her hands were painted with bright red danko. In a place like this, the color looked eerie and strange. Wash her clean. When Lily heard this command, murderous intent flashed in her eyes, and she clenched her fists almost instantly. But the next moment, the bunny girl seemed to have discovered something interesting. The corners of her mouth curled up. She thought about it and glanced at Lily again, with a strange look in her eyes. "I'm really not afraid." Compared with the woman who was dragged out of the cage before, Lily stood up straight on her own and did not need two big men to pull her to stand firm. And the most important thing is that she didn't feel it before in the cage, but now after pulling her out of the cage, the bunny girl discovered that compared to the sallow and thin woman in front of her, Lily definitely seemed to be in much better spirits. The bunny girl seemed to have discovered something interesting and became excited. "Send her back." "Wait a minute." As soon as she said these words, Mrs. Mary suddenly spoke lazily. Her eyes fell from the original woman to Lily, as if she was picking some goods, and she looked up and down at Lily. "I also think this girl is good, I want her." "Madam." When the bunny girl heard this, she couldn't help but glared at the woman who spoke first. She leaned towards Mrs. Mary and whispered in her ear, "To tell you the truth, Mr. Casualty hasn't been here for a long time. I'm on the island. It's said that I feel tired of playing this kind of game." She spoke in a very low voice, and I'm afraid the waiter standing behind her might not be able to hear it. However, after Lily's practice, her 5 senses were sensitive and she could still hear her words clearly. Now it's not easy to find such a strong person who is not afraid of death compared to ordinary prey. Mr. Random will definitely come. In order to express my apology, I can make an exception and let you choose 2 prey at a time. What do you think?" As soon as the bunny girl said this, Lily's clenched palm suddenly relaxed again. It could be seen that Mrs. Mary was moved by the word exception. It was unknown whether it was because she was afraid of the Mr. Casual that the bunny girl said or something else. She hesitated for a moment, but nodded in agreement. The bunny girl grinned and winked at the big man holding Lily, who pushed Lily into the cage again. Lily was pushed into the cage and fell to the ground like others, motionless. After a while, one of the 2 women who were first locked in the cage was taken out. The cage was locked again, which proved that this time it was not a choice between the 2, but both people were facing death. At first, the woman thought she had finally escaped. After discovering that she was still going to die, she suddenly let out a heart-rending scream and started struggling again. Another woman who was newly pushed out stared at her resentfully. After this woman was washed and stripped, the men tied chains on the hands and feet of the 2 women, and then went out at the signal of Mrs. Mary. "Now, let's play a game." As soon as these people left, Mrs. Mary, who looked like a lady at first, immediately took off her coat. There was no trace under her scarlet coat, and her well-maintained figure and skin looked so white in this secret room. She elegantly sat on the chair, took out a wine glass from the refrigerator and poured herself a glass of wine. Now, I need some blood. There is a scale there, do you see it? She chuckled and pointed at something like a seesaw not far away to show to the two locked up women who were at a loss, there is a tool over there. In fact, I don't need to kill it myself, you two, she spoke in an extremely slow tone. In such an environment, this methodical tone seemed particularly torturous. What I like most is to take good care of myself. My secret to health, you guys, do you know? She asked the two pale-faced women, but both women were just trembling and crying, and no one dared to answer her. Fortunately, Mrs. Mary didn't mind either. She didn't hear the two answers and kept to herself. My secret to health is to soak my body with blood, and then drink the blood to nourish it. After she finished speaking, she slowly poured the red wine in her hand onto her arm, then turned her head and stuck out her bright red tongue. Lick it away gently. A few drops of red wine fell to the ground, and she looked a little regretful. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1283. Now, I give you a chance. She unabashedly relaxed her body and squinted her eyes to look at the two women who were waiting for her verdict. You two can choose to put a certain amount of blood into the container there. Whoever wins, I'll let her go, okay? If she loses, then I'm sorry. After saying that, she looked at the numb faces of the two women and explained, what I mean is that I can decide who wins. I will explain to the owner here and let one of you out. Such words made the eyes of the two originally desperate women suddenly light up. Entering here is actually the same as death, but no one is willing to wait to die, especially in this terrible place, dying in an extremely painful way. If there is a chance to escape from here, it would be great news for the two women. Not only the two women were trembling with excitement, many people in the iron cage heard this and turned their necks to look this way. Many people in the cage were thankful that they were not taken out, but now they heard that the winner would have a chance to leave, and they all slapped the iron cage desperately. I am a regular visitor here. I can make the decision. Of course, those of you who go out must swear not to tell anything about this place. Mrs. Mary curled her lips, as if she didn't hear the shouts of many people in the cage. I do, just staring at the two women with excited faces. How about it, do you like this game? I like it, the two women's cheeks flushed and they nodded desperately. At this moment, I almost knelt down and kowtowed to Mrs. Mary. Seeing the scene in the cage, Lily sighed inwardly. In fact, how can people who enter here actually get out? This Mrs. Mary is clearly playing tricks on these two people, but these people have been stuck in despair for too long. He couldn't even hear such an obvious lie, but instead clung to it as if it were a life-saving straw. Since this woman claims to be a frequent visitor to the island, it proves that she has killed more than one person, since she has killed people before. How could you let the people here out? It's not her first time here. It's impossible for this woman to feel compassion for these people. From this, it can be seen that Mrs. Mary is indeed a regular visitor. A few simple lies have brought this person together. The two women's desire to survive made them no longer as lifeless as before, allowing them to have more fun. As expected, the next moment Mrs. Mary's eyes flashed with sarcasm. Hearing these words from the two women, he licked his lips. Since you like it, why don't you still move? She raised her wrist, but unfortunately she didn't wear much jewelry. Mrs. Mary obviously thought of this as well, stretched out her right index finger and tapped her temple. Forgot I don't have a watch with me anymore. In this way, I count the time for 100 times. Which child can give me more blood and a greater amount of blood, even if she wins? How about it? After saying that, she started counting in her mouth. The two women suddenly ran towards the balance like crazy, both wearing heavy anklets on their feet. Neither of them had eaten anything before, but now they both seem to have been injected with chicken blood. Usually, they are desperately trying to get closer to the balance, and each other wants to stumble the other during the process. Mrs. Mary seemed to like the scene very much, and she counted excitedly. Watch two women kill each other in a desperate attempt to please her. These two people also fought hard to survive. The attack was not serious at all, it was just about beating the other person to death. After Mrs. Mary counted to 20, the two of them had rolled into a ball. But she seemed a little tired of seeing this scene, and frowned. Okay. Time is running out, and I don't want you to dissatisfy me in the end. As soon as these words were spoken, both women got up from the ground. There are clean stainless steel basins placed on the scales not far away, and a delicate dagger is placed in each. There are also machetes, saws and other items next to them. The two women shivered involuntarily, and each picked up the dagger. Compared with those people who were frequently disemboweled and dismembered before, it is undoubtedly much better to just use a dagger to cut and bleed. The two women were crying while picking up the dagger and stabbing their own hearts. The blood vessels between the wrists were cut, and the warm blood spattered out with a puff sound as the two men choked in pain. The woman sitting in the seat licked her lips excitedly when she saw this scene. She counted to 70 and frowned with dissatisfaction. It seems that there is no winner or lose between you. As soon as these words were spoken, the two women cried louder. The two began to mutilate themselves desperately, and the sky was shaking, sometimes going this way, sometimes going that way. Under such circumstances, the two women screamed and cried in fear, and in the end the winner came out after counting 100 times. After losing, the losing woman reluctantly put on a hood that was like a shark's mouth, full of iron teeth. I don't know what the beginning of Mrs. Mary was. The hood opened and closed like chewing food, and the woman quickly lost her voice and fell to the ground. One of the more victorious women was already swaying, thinking she had won. She stared at Mrs. Mary angrily, but saw the lady elegantly pouring the blood into a clean bath nearby. The bath was dyed bright red, and she soaked in it. With a pleading look on her face, the woman dragged the chain towards her. Please, didn't you say let me go? The woman soaking in the bathhouse narrowed her eyes in comfort. I only said I would spare you, but I didn't say let you go. If you can leave, just follow me. But there are chains on your feet, and it seems like you can't walk. No, if you can get rid of this chain, I can let you go. The woman who originally thought she had won finally faced the test until now. This Mrs. Mary is indeed a veteran. She didn't do anything herself, but the two of them tortured her to the fullest. The key to the iron chain was not in this woman's hand. The iron chain was extremely thick and stuck tightly around her ankles, and the other end was tied to the secret room. In the end, she still couldn't get out of the secret room. When Mrs. Mary, who had had so much fun, left, the poor woman was thrown into the secret room angrily and dragged out by several big men. The secret room was reopened. After cleaning, everything fell into silence again. However, Lily began to think of the Mr. Casual that the bunny girl had mentioned. Since these people were regular visitors to the island, they were probably also people who knew how to play. If she escaped this time, it would probably be her turn next time. 3 more people were sent to the middle cage. When these 3 people were first sent, they must have been knocked unconscious just like the original owner. They screamed and cried and beat the iron cage until they woke up. The people in the cage were numb and quiet. The 3 of them slapped and shouted the name Hua Dongming every day, asking him to let them out. It is conceivable that these people must have been tricked by the same person. When the secret room door opened again, the person who came this time was probably not Mr. Random, but selected one of the 3 people and dragged him out. After seeing what kind of place this was, the 2 survivors learned the lesson and did not dare to say anything anymore. Under such circumstances, the Mr. Casual that the bunny girl said last time finally came. This Mr. Casual is about 30 years old. He is a middle-aged man with a strong body like a bear. His face is covered with oil paint, and his appearance cannot be seen. As soon as he arrived, Lily was pulled out of the cage. According to the rules, normally the prey would be cleaned by two strong men before being given to the guests to enjoy, but this Mr. Casual didn't seem to like it. When someone touches his prey, the bunny girl and the waiter seem to have known his character for a long time and respectfully exit the room, which is exactly what Lily wants. Mr. Casual stared at Lily with excitement in his eyes. The people on the island were right. This woman was indeed different from the women he had played with before. She didn't seem to be very afraid of him. When the door closed after those people left, she even moved her hands and feet. The man became more and more excited and turned his head. He has been practicing fighting all year round and has excellent physical fitness. And because he likes challenges, Lily's feet did not have the same straps on Lily's feet as the two women who were sent out of the cage when Lady Mary came. She wore an anklet, which undoubtedly greatly increased her mobility. "It seems that you can't wait for my arrival." The man looked at Lily up and down. Her body was not as thin as the other men and women locked in this cage, and she did not need anyone to support her. Her eyes were clear and cold. At this time Mr. Casual even had the illusion that she was not his prey, but he had become the prey in her eyes. He grinned. As soon as he said these words, Lily nodded. It has indeed been a while. Thanks to the fact that she had to wait for Mr. Casual to come, the people here gave her some extra time. After practicing physical skills, and with the increase in force value, she was now able to protect herself a little more. "Heart of, I'll let you die a happy death." As soon as these words were spoken, not only Mr. Casual was a little surprised, but even the other people in the cage turned their heads and stared at Lily in surprise. Everyone thinks that Lily is crazy. The prey who enters here rarely talk to the hunter. Most of the time, even the people in the cage are silent. Even if they can speak, they are either begging for mercy or almost screaming and crying. But at this time, Lily was calm and collected. She did not cry in despair like the person who was pulled out of the cage before. But not only did she not cry, she actually said that she wanted to kill the strong man in front of her. To be continued. P.S. I haven't updated it for a long time. Extra updates will be added if you get 150 monthly votes today. If you have votes, please vote for me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1284. You want me to die more painfully. When the man with a beard heard this, he suddenly laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world, but it's a pity. I won't let you die more painfully. As he spoke, he began to move his hands and feet. King is indeed right. The island did give me such a good thing this time. I haven't enjoyed it like this for a long time. Mr. Casual became more and more excited as he spoke, and even jumped with his feet on the ground. I have been a mercenary for 10 years, and there are not many people who dare to tell me in front of me that they want me to die more happily. Before he finished speaking, Lily frowned and said impatiently, "King? How many people have you killed and you think you are the king? Can you stop talking nonsense?" She didn't have much time to defeat this casual man after Mr. She didn't know if there was any surveillance here. If the people on the island were alerted at the moment she found out that she had escaped, Lily didn't know much about the situation on the island, but she knew that these people could do such a thing. Look, the island must be heavily defended. She doesn't have much confidence that she can defeat these people, let alone buy an island and engage in such a murderous business. The people on the island may have guns. With her in the current situation, if she was faced with a gun, she would definitely suffer. So she had to escape from here within 15 minutes after defeating Mr. Casual, and avoid all kinds of surveillance on the island, and find a way to leave the island. The bearded man seemed to have not been interrupted by someone yelling like this for a long time. When Lily scolded him like this, his face was a little gloomy at first. Then he laughed sinisterly, and the next moment he narrowed his eyes. What a disobedient prey! After he said that, he suddenly rushed towards Lily like a cannonball, and his clenched fists came towards her. Bring forth a fierce fisting style. This person's attack speed is not slow, and his punches are powerful. Just as he said, one look at this posture. It's not just fancy tricks. But he was fast, but Lily was a little faster than him. When his fist came over, Lily turned her head to avoid the punch. However, the wind of the punch still caused the skin on her cheek to tingle slightly. Seeing that she had avoided the punch, the man quickly retracted his fist and backed away. He did not rush forward because of the excessive punch. Judging from this point alone, his previous statement that he was a mercenary was not nonsense. Who are you? The man stared at Lily warily. If he could dodge his punch, even the many strong and muscular men on the island might not be able to do so. He could see that it was not a coincidence that Lily dodged the blow. Her body reacts quickly. And she was very calm and collected, unlike an ordinary 16 or 17-year-old girl. Mr. Casual frowned. Are you being targeted by an international organization? At this time, he had begun to wonder if Lily was a spy sent by an international organization, but there was no expression on her face covered in oil paint. After a while, he seemed to have figured out something. Never mind it. These things have nothing to do with me anyway. This time I can have fun and let King owe me a favor. It's great. In his eyes he looked extremely excited, as if he had encountered something extremely fun. You are in good health. This means that you must have a high tolerance. You won't die easily like those trash. You don't want to. If you disappoint me, you must let me do all you can. Ha 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 ha, the man finished. Laugh loudly. Lily glanced at him with a cold look in her eyes. There's so much nonsense. The bearded man heard this. He snorted, don't worry, I will keep your tongue and listen to your screams. As soon as he finished speaking, Lily had already taken the lead. She punched in the same way as Mr. Casual, but unlike Mr. Casual, the man's fist was strong and powerful. Lily's punch was not as powerful as the man's. But in terms of strength, the man's punch was intended to abuse. If a punch hit someone's body, the skin would be torn, the flesh would be torn, and the bones would be broken. But Lily's punches were deadly. At first, the man didn't take it seriously when he saw her punching. Instead, he raised his arms to block it. But when the fist connected with the man's arm, he quickly realized that he had made a mistake. Mr. Casual has always believed that women are far inferior to men on a congenital basis due to physical reasons. The skin of his arms is strong. Let alone a woman punching, even if a man punches, he can block it with these arms. But when his arm blocked Lily's fist, he could already feel the tingling pain in his arm muscles before the punch was hit. The force of this punch was not small. He had indeed been a mercenary for many years. The sixth sense gained from countless deaths caused him to instinctively withdraw his arms, and instead chose to step aside. This was the first time he had given in when facing his prey. For Mr. Casual, he was supposed to be here to have fun, but now he became someone else's fun. There was a surge in his heart. Angry, with crazy killing intent in his eyes, the next moment he saw Lily couldn't hold back her hands and feet because of her punching posture, and the slender arm slid past him, and he sneered, a woman is a woman. The cattail fan-like hand grasped Lily's wrist. With the force, he originally wanted to break her wrist first, causing her to suffer temporary pain and lose a certain amount of combat power. However, he did not expect that the next moment Lily would use his hand to break her wrist. The force was close to his chest, and the hand he grabbed grasped his palm. He turned his back to him, and at the same time, he bent his other arm and hit his face hard with his elbow. Hearing a loud bang, Mr. Random couldn't help but scream, "Ah!" The bridge of his nose was hit, and the clicking sound of the broken bones came into his mind. Severe pain struck his brain, and warm liquid flowed out of the bridge of his nose almost at the same time. Lily succeeded and did not retreat. Instead, she raised the arm holding him, flexibly got out from under his arm, and pressed her knees hard against the hollows of his knees. Mr. Casual couldn't control his knees. When she rushed forward to kneel down, she held his chin with her arms and punched him in the neck with her clenched fist. At the critical moment, even though Mr. Casual had just been hit and his nose was sore and even bleeding from the nose, he still squatted down and stretched out one leg before Lily's fist fell. Using the other foot as a fulcrum, he swept towards Lily. When he stood up, he grabbed Lily's body and tried to smash it to the ground. Lily was caught by him, but when he pulled her to the ground, her body slipped under his crotch, and she stood up and stood behind Mr. Casual. Mr. Casual's hand and Lily's hand were still holding each other tightly, and their bodies were bent forward to form a. Lily was forced to stretch her hand back from between her legs. Before he could react, Lily folded his hand with one hand. Under the surge of spiritual power in his body, Mr. Casual let out a muffled groan, and beans oozed from his forehead. Big beads of sweat. With a muffled sound of bones, his wrist was twisted and dislocated. Lily kicked him on the lower back. The man's strong body stumbled forward until he hit the marble table not far in front of him with a bang. The table was originally made of marble and was extremely hard, but under Lily's strength and the strong body of the man, the impact was so strong that the table made a clicking sound and actually cracked from the middle. It was filled with various instruments of torture slipped and fell down with a clanking sound, scattering all over the floor. The bearded man held the broken table with his hands, and raised his head in embarrassment. The veins on the back of his hands were pulsing. At this time, the neatly combed hair had become a little messy, and his eyes were full of evil. He reached out and wiped his own eyes. Nose, perhaps this movement affected the wound on the bridge of his nose that had just been broken, causing him to grin and curse a few times fiercely. "I haven't been injured in many years." The paint on his face was stained with blood. The man stretched out his hand and started to tear up his clothes, then picked up a torture instrument on the table and tilted his head. "Now, I have decided to change my mind. I will not let you die easily, because it will be too easy for you." He was breathing heavily. The pain of having his nose broken was obviously irritating to him. In the past, he usually abused the prey in these cages, but now he actually lost it in the hands of a prey. Not only was he unable to take it, her life actually caused her to be injured. Even though the injury was not fatal, it still made the man extremely angry. Lily didn't speak. Her fists were trembling slightly at this moment. This was the result of the man's strength just now. Her time to practice martial arts was still too short, and what she encountered this time was not a soft persimmon. So when they fought hard, she could win with her internal strength, but now after the two sides separated, her body was shocked below, those hands were simply out of control. Taking advantage of the man's opportunity to speak, she mobilized her spiritual power and turned it several times before the hand gradually calmed down. When Mr. Casual rushed over again, this time he learned from the previous lesson. He did not give Lily another chance to approach easily. Instead, he took advantage of his own advantages and prepared for a quick victory. He has strong strength, good physical condition, and extremely explosive power. However, because he practices more like external techniques, he is very powerful at first, but his endurance is not strong, unlike Lily who relies on spiritual power. Lasting. Therefore, he planned to use his own advantage to control Lily and make it lose its mobility. But he wanted a quick victory, and Lily had the same idea. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1285. When Mr. Casual's fist attacked again, Lily held his wrist. When the man saw this scene, A look of satisfaction flashed in his eyes very quickly. The same move might have been useful when Lily dealt with him for the first time, but if he had suffered the consequences of such a move, how could he give her another chance to get close? After Lily grasped his wrist tightly, the man shook his arms vigorously and freed Lily's hand, then he grabbed Lily's body and tried to swing her out. But it was easy to touch her, but difficult to throw her out. Lily's body flew up, but it was not thrown by him. Instead, she jumped up in the air and sat directly on his neck, grabbing him with both hands. The head is held. She made a fist with her hand, and when she slammed her fist down hard with a bang, Mr. Casual could hear the sound of the bones in his head being cracked by her. Before he felt any pain, his body was already moving forward involuntarily. Bump away. His head was hit by gravity, and his hands that were originally holding Lily's legs loosened instinctively. The next moment Lily turned over and jumped down. As she landed, the body of Mr. Casual, who was extremely strong before, swayed. After shaking twice and falling back, she stretched out her hand to strangle Mr. Random's head. She was originally going to walk to the door, but Lily turned her head and glanced at the iron cage in mid-air. The sound of the fight between her and the man just now did not disturb anyone outside due to the extremely strong sound insulation in the secret room, and no one came to inspect it, but the people in the cage were frightened. Because of what Lily said at the beginning, many people looked here eagerly. When they saw her fighting with Mr. Casual, many people's eyes widened. At this time, there was ecstasy and hope in their eyes. When they saw Lily about to leave, someone couldn't help but grab the iron cage and cried, "Please, please, take us away." There were also some classmates of the original owner Yao Beihee in the cage. They had been imprisoned for such a long time, and under the shadow of death, they originally thought they would die this time. But I didn't expect that this woman, who was usually the most active in the iron cage, would be so powerful and restrain a strong man. Faced with the desire to survive, many people seemed to have seen the light of hope, biting their lips and sobbing, "Please, don't leave us. Please." There was fear of death in those eyes, like a frightened little beast. The earliest people who were imprisoned have been detained for more than 3 months. For such a long time, there are still people coming to the island to torture and kill them. As time goes by every day, everyone knows that the idea of someone coming to rescue them is just a dream. If they can't escape this time, everyone is very likely to die here, it just depends on the time. Now that he finally got such an opportunity, the people in the cage began to cry uncontrollably. Lily cursed twice. She knew that escaping with these people would most likely only become a burden to her, and she had no obligation to save these people, but she still picked up a dagger and slit Mr. Random's throat. When the man was dizzy, he only heard Lily say calmly, "I told you, I will let you die more happily." Immediately afterwards, there was a stinging pain in his throat. He could feel the air exhaled after the throat was cut open and the blood slowly flowing out from the broken throat as the carotid artery was cut. At the last moment, Mr. Casualty what came to mind was, "This is how it feels after having your skull smashed and your neck cut? There really is retribution in this world." He used to kill people for fun, but he never thought that one day the hunter would die at the hands of the prey. Lily stepped on the cracked stone table. He jumped up and hung in an iron cage about 3 meters above the ground. Maybe it's because every time the hunters on the island kill the prey, they come back to clean the secret room. And because the iron cage was closed again with a black curtain, the iron cage did not rise high before the secret room was cleaned and closed again. Lily jumped on the iron cage and caught it. Many people in the cage stood up excitedly. The 4 corners of the iron cage were fastened with 4 silver iron chains. At this time, it was shaking because of Lily's sudden jump on it. The people inside grabbed the iron bars to steady themselves, but when they found that the iron door was locked, the look of hope in many people's eyes was replaced by despair. Because the secret room itself was not easy to escape, The lock that locked the cage was just an ordinary iron lock. Lily grabbed the iron lock, used her spiritual power to hold it in her hand, and she broke the lock and put it into her arms. I promised you first that I will take you out of the secret room, but after leaving the secret room, everyone will escape individually under such circumstances. Everyone knows that the island is extremely dangerous. Lily has not been practicing martial arts for a long time, and it was also the clay bodhisattva who crossed the river. She couldn't protect herself, and she had to be careful when facing all kinds of characters and weapons on the island. There was no guarantee that she would be able to escape from the island alive, so she could not promise to lead these people to escape from the island. What should we do? After hearing what she said, someone couldn't help crying again. When there was no hope, everyone was waiting to die in fear and suffering, but now they finally had hope, and when they heard Lily said that he would not lead them out of the island safely, many people couldn't help but cry again. Find a way by yourself. I'm powerless, and I can't guarantee that I can escape from the island. Lily opened the door. At this moment, none of these people were frightened by what she just said or for other reasons. If anyone dared to jump down, she frowned slightly, but there is one thing: you may die if you escape from here, but if you stay in the cage all the time, everyone will definitely die. The most important thing is that if you stay in the cage, you will be tortured to death, and die in a miserable and painful way. But once you leave this hellish place, everyone can choose the way they want to die, even if they choose another death after landing. The law is much stronger than falling into the hands of these demons on the island. As soon as Lily finished speaking, the people in the cage fell silent. Aren't you going down? Can't you take us down? A classmate who was in the same class as Yao Bai timidly asked. We haven't eaten or drank for a while, and we don't have much energy. You have eaten, and you jumped on it easily just now. The other people in the cage didn't say anything when they heard this, but judging from their expressions, other people also agreed with the girl's statement. I'll give you 3 seconds. If you don't jump, I will find a way to leave by myself, Lily said calmly. The reason why these people have not eaten or drank for a while is not only because they are afraid of eating, but there is another reason. It means that if you eat too much, your body will be too strong and you will be the first to be captured and killed. In the face of death, everyone is selfish. This iron cage is about 3 meters above the ground. Rather than saying that everyone is afraid of jumping, it is more that some people are afraid of getting hurt and being thrown down. There are too many people here. If I take everyone down, I will consume my own energy. Once my energy is consumed, it will be detrimental to my escape. Everyone knew that talking nonsense under such circumstances would have no effect. Several people cried and gritted their teeth, crawled out of the cage shivering, and jumped in with their eyes closed. Once the first one jumps, the others are no longer willing to stay in the cage and wait to die. By the time the last woman arrives, many people on the ground have reluctantly gotten up. The woman has her eyes closed and does not dare to go out. He looked and didn't dare to jump. He held the iron cage tightly with his hands and cried, "Please, help me." Lily put her hand into the cage, and the woman's face showed joy. The next moment, she was dragged out of the cage by Lily. Amidst her sharp screams, Lily threw her to the ground. In this place, no one can help anyone. If this woman doesn't dare to jump now and relies on help from others, even if she escapes from the secret room in the future, she will only be a hindrance. Several people got off the ground. Although some people would inevitably be injured, they could still walk with difficulty. The beard on the ground had been cut and his throat was silent. Lily took out 2 knives from the torture tools on the side and inserted them into her waist. Seeing her actions, the others hurriedly looked for weapons to defend themselves. The body of Mr. Random was dragged to the door. Once the electronic sensor at the door sensed someone approaching, it would sound a beeping alarm. She took a machete and chopped off the big man's head. This action was not beautiful, and there was blood and bone fragments flying everywhere. Several people around them bit their lips and forced themselves not to make a sound. When the bearded man's head was cut off, Lily removed his eyelids and pointed his head towards the electronic screen. The scanned pattern was displayed on the screen. I wonder if it was because Mr. Casual was dead that the scanning time took a long time. The people who escaped from the iron cage simply felt that these few seconds were extremely long for everyone. Cold sweat broke out on many people's backs again. Everyone remained calm until a few breaths later, the electronic screen showed a sign that the scan had been successful. With a ding sound, the door lock was opened, and he grabbed the door handle with his hand and pulled hard, and the heavy iron door slowly opened. This is the first time for the prey who were caught in the iron cage to see a world other than the secret room. Many people were so excited that they almost cried. As Lily had imagined, there was no one outside, but a long underground passage that was extremely ornately decorated, with bright lights on overhead, and the entire passage was unusually quiet. There were several secret rooms like this in the passage, but Lily only had 15 minutes at most after opening the door, and she couldn't open the doors to other secret rooms, so she turned her head and glanced at both ends of the passage, divided into two teams, each running in different directions. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1286. This was also to avoid being caught by the people on the island once they were discovered to have escaped. Similarly, now facing two completely different roads, no one knows which way is the way out, and someone needs to explore the way. However, everyone understands what Lily means, but everyone knows that once they escape, they will choose. If you go in the wrong direction and are chased by people on the island, you will definitely die. So when Lily chose a direction to run, everyone followed her. Although everyone knew that the direction she chose was not necessarily the right one, because of her previous performance, everyone instinctively trusted her and followed her. Lily took a look and felt a little helpless. Time was precious now, and if she really wanted to follow them, there was nothing she could do. Fortunately, everyone was lucky. They ran this passage all the way to the end without encountering anyone. After running for about 5 minutes, there was a fishy sea breeze blowing from the front, which obviously meant there was an exit. Everyone was in high spirits. Lily was okay after running all the way, but the other people were very tired. However, they all knew that their lives were at stake at home, so they didn't dare to gasp for air, so they gritted their teeth and endured it. After walking about 20 or 30 meters, everyone in the distance could see a pavilion not far away, where two strong men with guns were waiting. Apart from these two threats, Lily was refreshed. Yes, she saw the parking garage behind these two men. There are 7 or 8 cars parked there. As long as the two men in front of them can be lured away, once everyone gets in the car, they can drive out of this underground secret room. But the difficulty is that these two men are not easy to deal with at first glance. The two of them were wearing camouflage uniforms with tight thighs. It looked like they had practiced fighting skills. Most importantly, it was the two men holding guns in their hands that were fatal. Everyone was located about 10 meters away from the corner of the pavilion. There was no obstruction between the 10 meters and the pavilion. That was why the two men with guns did not notice it. Simply because they probably never thought that the prey in the basement would escape. Lily raised her head. There was an electronic sensor 10 meters in front of her. Once she got within the range of this electronic sensor, the thing would scream, and the two men with guns would definitely notice them. There were dense beads of sweat on her forehead, and the people hiding behind her were even more unbearable. At this time, some people started to bite their lips nervously and shed tears while swallowing their saliva. To deal with these two people, you can't fight head-on. She hadn't practiced physical skills to the point where she could withstand a bullet, and she didn't have the same guns and weapons to fight with the two men. Thinking of weapons, Lily suddenly thought of a way. She reached out and touched her waist. There were 2 knives she had retrieved from the secret room hidden there. When she pinched the lock in half, she inserted it into the lock. Into the arms. At this time, she took out the lock and tried it twice. She was going to use this thing as a hidden weapon to attack, but the gap between the two sides was too far. She did not throw the thing out immediately, but calculated the distance in her mind several times. And the strength and angle you want to use. She licked her dry lips, and the fine beads of sweat on her forehead gathered like small streams and poured into her eyes, stinging her eyes. Lily stretched out her hand and wiped her face, and the blood on her hands from killing people was wiped all over her face. The fishy smell was now cruel to her face. Lily glanced not far away again, closed her eyes, and then threw a dagger in her hand. The sound of the dagger piercing the air obviously attracted the attention of the two people over there. Both of them turned their heads in unison, and the next moment the dagger was thrown by Lily. It bounced off the wall and flew straight towards the man standing on Lily's side. The dagger struck so fast that the man didn't react at all. He only heard a soft puff sound, and the dagger passed through his neck and flew to the ground and disappeared. The man instinctively reached out to cover his neck, holding the knife in his hand. The gun fell to the ground with a clang, and he stood down softly. A large amount of blood spurted out from between his fingers. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Such an incident suddenly frightened the man holding a gun across from him. He yelled, "Who?" The gun in his hand pointed at the passage and started shooting. Lily threw the broken lock in her hand at the sensor above her head, and the device first sounded 2 beeps, and then was hit. It shattered with a clang, and the glass shards and the iron lock fell to the ground together. When the man saw this scene, he didn't even see the person opposite him. One of his partners was already dead. The gun in his hand had been empty of bullets. Many bullet casings were bouncing on the ground. He cursed twice. He picked up the communicator, refilled the bullets, and came over to take a look. And taking advantage of this opportunity, she jumped out. Her body was light and flexible, like a ghost. She was close to the distance of more than 20 meters in the blink of an eye. When the man noticed that Lily was approaching, he held the communicator and didn't say anything. He raised the gun in his hand and didn't hit Lily's head. Lily held a sharp axe in her hand and struck with a porphy sound. In the back of his head. The man stared and kept turning around, but because of the heavy blow to his head, his legs weakened and he slowly fell down. Lily pulled out the axe, and in order to prevent the man from reporting the news without dying, he raised the axe and hit his head again. After making sure that he was dead, he inserted the bloody axe back into his waist, and she picked up the gun from the floor of another person who had been shot by her and died. These were tools that could save her life. When the people following her saw this scene, they all scrambled to grab another gun. When they arrived at the parking lot outside, the loud noise caused by the gunman's shooting caused the surrounding parked vehicles to start sounding sirens. The communicators held by the 2 dead men transmitted a woman asked seriously. "What happened at Gate 9?" The car alarm sounded through the microphone, and the woman's voice became even more anxious. Lily crushed the communicator with her foot, and the female voice inside suddenly stopped. She chose a modified car, took the gun in her hand and shot at the driver's window glass first. The car's horn sounded even more harsh, and spider-like cracks appeared on the tempered glass. Lily then used her hand to she clenched her fist and hit the glass hard. After 2 or 3 blows, the glass, although it had been modified, still shattered under the successive impacts of gravity. She reached in and opened the car door. She sat in and listened again. When the car was still screaming, she cut the line on the alarm and the sound suddenly stopped. Several other people crowded into the car one after another. As soon as she stepped on the accelerator, the car rushed out. After coming out of the parking lot, fortunately, it was already evening outside. There were lights everywhere on the island, making the entire island very beautiful. Unfortunately, there was such a dirty business hidden in the dark. She must have received news of the incident at the so-called Gate 9. When Lily drove out, there was still a guard box not far ahead. The roadblocks had been put down, and there were two men holding guns on both sides. Facing this side, after seeing the car coming, the guns in the hands of the two men had been opened, and bullets were fired. There was a clang, clang, clang sound from all around the car, and the body of the car was hit by bullets. Rebounded, two holes were punched through the front windshield, and the side of the woman sitting in the passenger seat was scratched by a bullet. Half of her body was soaked with blood, but she covered the wound and did not dare to shout. "Stop," the two men fired for a while and said coldly, and Lily drove directly towards the pavilion. There was already a layer of sharp objects on the ground, the tires of the car were punctured, and the upper half of the car was lowered. However, under the inertia of the car, it still crashed through the strong roadblock. During the impact, Lily's body first jumped forward due to inertia. After stabilizing her body, she immediately opened the car door and got out. The two men pointed their guns in the direction of the car door. As soon as they found Lily appearing, they fired. Lily quickly hid in the car and lowered her head. The bullet was blocked by the door and made a crisp sound, while the other one passed through the window. A young man sitting in the back row groaned and fell limply. As I sat on my seat, I groaned in pain. Footsteps sounded, and two men with guns walked towards the car after firing two shots. When they were still 2 steps away from the car door, Lily Len might as well push the door open. The opened car door startled the two men, and they instinctively took a step back. Taking advantage of this moment, Lily tore off the seat belt and ran out of the car, throwing the seat belt in her hand like a whip. When the two men hurriedly held their guns and were about to shoot at her, one of them was hit in the face by the safety buckle of his seat belt. The gun in his hand lost its accuracy and tilted to the side. Although the man had the instinct to shoot, but the bullet hit the car next to it with a porphy sound, causing the people in the car to scream again. Before the other one could take out his gun, the seat belt in Lily's hand had already been wrapped around his neck. She pulled her hand on the seat belt and heard a click sound of bones breaking. The man with the gun, her eyes widened and her head fell softly on her shoulders. Lily grabbed the gun from his hand and released her grip on the seat belt, and the man fell softly to the ground. From Lily getting out of the car door to killing this man, everything happened in a flash of lightning. The man opposite who misplaced the bullet hadn't come back to his senses. The next moment, he only heard the sound of the bullet being loaded, with residual warmth. The barrel of the gun was aimed at his head. After a bang, the bullet came out from the side of his head and caused a splash of blood. The man also fell to the ground. To be continued. P.S. This story is not Mr. Lee's story, Mr. Lee is next. Professional custody of monthly tickets for 20 years. Do you have any extra monthly votes that are extremely valuable, but you don't know where to vote, and you are worried about it? Now I have good news for you. From now on, everyone no longer has to worry about which store to go to for monthly tickets. I have been professionally collecting monthly tickets for many years. I have high quality and integrity. I never return the money once I collect it, and I still want it again. I am well known in the industry. If you don't believe me, you can ask me. I have a good reputation. If you have a ticket, please leave it to me for investment management, and you will receive a lot of love from the author, 9999 sincerely. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1287. The car is no longer usable and the front 2 tires have been punctured. From the time of the accident at exit 9 to now, the people on the island have reacted and there is no time to delay any longer. Although it would be much more convenient to have a car. But people from the island will arrive at any time. Get out of the car. Lily glanced at the car behind her. Those people were huddled in the car. When she was fighting with the two big men just now, the people in the car were hiding in the car and did not dare to get out. Now the two big men have been dealt with. The people in the car seemed to be still waiting to see if there was any danger. Lily frowned and drank, and someone in the car said with a crying voice, "Someone is injured." Two people were injured in the incident just now. Although the wound on one of them was not fatal, he was so frightened that he had no strength to get out of the car. As for the other boy sitting in the back seat, his right shoulder was penetrated by a bullet. The blood that flowed out turned the seat red. He was screaming in pain and needed help from others. The people around looked at Lily timidly, as if waiting for her idea. Lily glanced around. Everyone on the island was very unfamiliar. She was worried that she had taken the wrong road and fallen into a trap. At this moment, the people in the car still lingering and refusing to come down. Picking up the two guns on the ground, she looked at the people in the car coldly through the broken window. "You know what kind of place this is, do you still want to wait for the doctor to come? In such a situation, if you are injured, you can only bear it yourself, and there is no chance for others to heal their injuries." As soon as she finished speaking, the people in the car couldn't make up their minds. These people had already been frightened and finally escaped from danger. This small car once gave everyone infinite courage, and they all dreamed of escaping from this terrible Alcatraz island in this car. But at this time, Lily forced everyone to get out of the car, and some people were injured. Once you get off the car and walk, you can't walk fast with just your legs, so some people hesitate and make suggestions. "Why don't we go back and grab another car? This place is not far from the parking lot. If we run faster, we can get a better car and then we can avoid taking this road." The king that Mr. Random mentioned should be the leader who organized all this on the island. There are many buildings on the island. I don't know which island he will live in. Lily wiped her face and escaped the secret room until now. Her body was tense and beads of sweat never stopped. She glanced at the people in the car and said, "It's okay then." Anyway, she was out of the secret room, and she had done what she could for these people. She threw one of the two guns she had just grabbed towards the car, but I remind you, the people on the island may be killed at any time. It will come, you have to act fast. Plus the gun he just threw over. These people already have two guns. Whether they can escape from the island and how long they can survive is all their own business. As soon as Lily finished speaking, she turned around and ran away. When the people in the car saw this scene, they couldn't help but become anxious. She ran far away and heard someone shouting, "Come back." Her figure gradually disappeared into the grass on both sides of the road, and it was starting to get dark. Lily only ran 400 to 500 meters away. The sound of a car could be heard not far away. It hadn't been long since she escaped from the secret room, but her body had been in a state of tension. At this time, her physical strength was also exhausted, and she heard the sound of a car. Lily guessed that the people on the island must have known about the prey escaping, and someone must have come to hunt them down. She lay down on the ground. While quietly recovering his strength, he put his ear close to the ground and could vaguely hear. "Escaped from exit 9 and killed 2 people at No 17. According to the direction, we escaped this way. Others will be responsible for other directions. Our group is divided into 10 teams, each team 5 people. There are people with terrifying strength among the prey, and something has happened to Mr. Random. Please be careful. Once you find traces of, you would rather kill them by mistake than let them go. If you are defeated, use, to contact." Everyone arrived in time. Lily tried to slow down her breathing. These people roughly assigned the direction of the search. She stood up and took a look. This place was not small, and there were many hiding places for those who escaped. The island is full of all kinds of plants. Once these temporarily mobilized armed forces are distributed, it will take a certain amount of time to come over. Rather than expending energy to escape and possibly encountering other search teams, it is better to just be there. If you just sit back and wait to recover your physical strength, your chances of winning may be even higher. If someone discovers her, as long as she can kill the person who discovered her before other teams come to support, then she has a chance to escape again. Lily thought of this and sat up. The spiritual power in her body had been consumed a lot just now, and the time to practice physical skills was still too short. The teams that came to catch the prey again must be equipped with better equipment than those used before. The 4 gun-wielding men she killed were much more powerful. In this hellish place, she could not relax for a moment. Taking advantage of the time when these people did not come, she got up and started practicing physical skills. Judging from the location where the sound just came from, these people should be at a certain distance from her. Judging from the words, these people should be conducting a carpet search and would not arrive here within 10 minutes. She did a few with this movement. She felt that the spiritual power in her body had been replenished, and now she could hear the footsteps of the searching team. Due to Lily's martial arts practice, her ears are much more sensitive than ordinary people, so she has noticed the approach of these people, but it seems that these people should not have noticed her whereabouts. There were several coconut trees not far away. If it was daytime, the leaves of the coconut trees were not dense, which was not a good hiding place at all. She would definitely not dare to go up there. But it was already dark at this time. Although there were street lights at regular intervals, the lights were dim, and because most of these lights only reached people's knees. When looking up, the tops of the coconut trees were only pitch black, and even a few stars overhead the coconuts that have formed a knot look blurry. Although Lily had already made up her mind to kill someone and silence her if she was unfortunately found out, if she could escape from the sight of these people, it would be good to hide for a while longer. Thinking of this, she stood up, jumped onto the coconut tree, and climbed to the top in 2 or 3 steps. The coconut tree was still swaying from the movement of her climbing up the tree, and the leaves were rustling. The search team in charge was already coming here. After standing taller, Lily could see the surrounding scene in her eyes. Some of the 10 teams were no longer visible, but there were several strong flashlights not far away. One direction was exactly the same. Go to the garage location. Less than 20 minutes have passed since Lily killed the last 2 men who blocked the road and separated from the group of prey in the iron cage until now, and she doesn't know if those people have escaped. This thought flashed through her mind, and Lily's attention soon focused on the group of people heading in her direction. These people are indeed well equipped. In addition to many of them holding weapons, the most important thing is that these people have infrared sensors in their hands. When Lily saw this situation, her eyes suddenly darkened. As long as the infrared sensors held by these people are pointed at the surrounding objects, all living things within the infrared range will be illuminated. In other words, she originally thought of hiding in the coconut tree and being surprised by these people. The attack is simply impossible. The search teams on the island were very careful. The sensors held by each team of 5 were responsible for different directions. In addition to the ground, they checked left and right, overhead, and even the rear that they had just walked not far before. When Lily discovered this, her heart suddenly sank to the bottom. These people all have weapons in their hands and carry a special box on their backs with a skull and crossbones logo on it and a spray nozzle next to them. They also wear gas masks on their faces. They know that the contents of this box cannot be anything good. Once her location is found, these guns can rip her body into pieces in just a few seconds, unless she takes advantage of them before they notice and takes action first. She has a gun in her hand, but there are not many bullets in the gun. The most important thing is that unless she has learned special shooting skills and aims at the necks of these people to make them incapacitated at the same time, otherwise these people he was fully armed, wearing a body armor and even a gas mask that looked like a special material on his head. Once one of them was injured, it was not necessary to kill all of them in an instant. Once these people reacted, they would be dead. By myself. Even though her shooting skills were great and she could kill people with one shot, the bullets in the gun were not enough to kill 5 people, and the thing made a lot of noise and could easily attract other people. Lily gave up the plan of using the gun and focused on herself. Those coconuts from the coconut trees under my feet. She has weapons, but when the opponent's weapons are more powerful than hers, an axe is of little use. Although these coconuts may not work, Lily is not willing to wait for death, so she naturally wants to give it a try. Her hand touched the coconut and was about to tear it off, but someone in the search team not far away suddenly stopped and made a pause gesture. The man tilted his head and responded. The people in the team temporarily stopped using infrared detection. After a blink of an eye, the man who had just responded said, "We'll be here right away." After saying this, the man turned around and ran in the other direction. "Let's go. Team 3 has found the trace." After hearing this, the remaining 4 people also ran away together. Lily was left sitting alone on the coconut tree, exhaled slowly, and took back her hand on the coconut. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1288. Although these people had just said they were leaving, in order to prevent these people from leaving and coming back, she still sat on the tree for a while. Only when she was sure that these people would not come back again did she jump down from the tree. The people in this area should have all run in the direction of the so-called Team 3. Lily guessed that the traces found by these people should be left by the prey who escaped from the iron cages that were separated from her before. But at this time, she didn't have the ability to go back and rescue these people. She herself was also a mud Buddha crossing the river, and she couldn't save herself. She just hoped that these people would have a longer life, at least have a car to escape farther, and not be killed easily. Died. She was not familiar with the road on this small island, so she had to walk in one direction. She did not dare to wander in. She had discovered several sensors on this island before. In order to avoid these things and not attract other people's attention, Lily did not go out. It was such a long distance, but it took nearly an hour to walk. During the random dodging, in order to avoid the guards, cameras, and sensors, Lily was forced into a corner of the island. Compared to the messy situation in other places, Lily was relatively quiet. She ran up a coconut tree and hid in the dark, staring into the distance. 200 or 300 meters ahead, near the bay, there was a group of townhouses blocking the way. There were a large number of people guarding the door. Lily took one look and already backed down. This time she was unlucky to go in the wrong direction. She was about to go back the way she came, but there was only one way to go back, and there was already someone leading her back. Several ferocious-looking dogs came towards us. Her heart sank. This was a corner with no way to retreat. The only way was to hide in a townhouse not far away. It's just that there are a lot of people guarding the main entrance in front. There are gates on the left and right sides. The most important thing is that they are unguarded. They are about 100 meters away from the main gate. People from far away can't see the direction here at all. But there must be other reasons why there are no guards here. Lily hesitated and jumped down from the tree. She hesitantly approached the door on the right. But I found that the gate on the right was indeed unguarded, but the ground was densely crisscrossed with electric grids. This passage was about 50 meters long. To enter from the right, there was no other way but to drive in. Car tires are insulators and can block electrical current. But when a car drives in, the sound will definitely attract the attention of the guards at the main gate. Presumably the gates on the left and right sides are in this way, so the gate on the right side is unguarded. The situation on the left side should be similar. The pursuers from behind are almost here. They have brought the dog. Once the dog smells her scent, she will definitely not be able to escape from the gate on the right. Lily must find a way to get in. The voltage of these power grids should be very high, and the grids laid out are extremely small. The remaining space is less than a quarter of the size of a palm. Lily gave up the idea of jumping into the grid and looked at the coconut trees above her head. There were a few coconuts growing there, and Lily started groping on the ground. These coconuts will fall when they mature. She just hopes that there are some dried coconuts under the tree. She touched it for a long time, and sure enough it was there. Some have just been dropped, and some have been dropped for a long time. It has shrunk a bit after drying. Lily touched it, picked out 4 or 5 dried coconuts, held them in her hands, and threw one on the power grid. The guard with the dog in the distance was not far away, and she could almost hear the dog barking in the dark night. Lily took a deep breath and jumped up. When she landed, she accurately stepped on the desiccated coconut. Without waiting for her body to settle, she threw another one far away. The current here must be quite high, because Lily immediately smelled the smell of coconuts being burned by electricity coming from under her feet. After throwing 4 of them, she had already jumped over the nearly 50-meter-long passage. In front of her was the garage. There was no one guarding the side. Lily was about to walk into the darkness when footsteps came from the opposite side. Someone seemed to be coming to the garage. She got into the flowers on the side. The guards leading the dogs not far away were also heading this way. Coming. Woof woof woof. Several dogs barked fiercely at the coconut tree where Lily had been staying before, looking extremely angry. Someone among the guards picked up the walkie-talkie, found it, at Gata in the West District. She should have stayed in the tree, and the dogs reacted to it. The dogs kept barking, and Lily frowned when she heard the sound. Okay, we'll track it down. The people who got into the car were also lucky, because with the appearance of this group of dog guides, Lily gave up her original idea of killing people. The man got into the car and drove away. When she went out, she greeted the people who were leading the dogs. Lily quietly walked into the villas. Shortly after she left, after the car left, the guards who were leading the dogs looked a little ugly, gone. They drove the dogs around, and the smell seemed to disappear in this area. The dogs were still barking, and the gatekeepers had been greeted at the main entrance. During this time, not to mention the prey that escaped from the cage, even if not even a fly has flown in. There are so many people at the main entrance, and there are surveillance cameras and sensors here. The people guarding the gate have said that no one is going this way, so the woman who escaped must not be here. The person who led the dog search retreated from the main entrance again. It seemed that he had lost the clue for a moment. After the leader reported to his superiors, he seemed to have been scolded and his face was a little gloomy. I don't believe it. She flew into the sky and escaped. No one has entered the front door, and everyone behind them followed the smell all the way through a carpet search. On the left and right are doors covered with circuits, about 20 meters wide and 50 meters long, paved with high-voltage electricity. This person neither took the front door nor retreated. It was a dead end for both sides, but where did she go? There was no one on the coconut tree, it seemed like it had disappeared out of thin air. The leader gritted his teeth bitterly, I told you from above that if we can't find anyone, we will all be in trouble. The owner of the island is not a good person. He kills people without blinking an eye. Lily can't be found after all. If she doesn't die, it will be the turn of these useless people to get into trouble. After hearing this, everyone trembled all over. The dogs were extremely angry and had to use force to tie them up. A man hesitated and glanced at the high-voltage electricity not far away. Is it coming from here? Did both sides go in? It is impossible for a living person to disappear for no reason. There is no front door and no back door. There are no guards on the left and right sides due to high-voltage electricity. If she entered from the left and right sides, it is not impossible. But as soon as this person said the words, the leading man laughed. Are you going for a walk? Am I serious? The guard explained, and the man snorted coldly. Those currents are enough to turn a person into coke. Who would go up there if they are tired of living? If she really goes there, it will save us trouble. The task everyone received is to kill her and not leak the secret of the island. If this prey chooses to die on its own, everyone can make a difference. But judging from what happened tonight, she is not only not stupid, but also extremely cautious and rational. Not only was she powerful in killing people, but she was also good at evading people. People on the island chased her for nearly 3 hours but could not find any trace of her. Not to mention that the island was covered with all kinds of surveillance cameras and alarms, but they were stunned. No sign of this cunning prey. This devastated the guards. Now what? The order from above has been issued. It has been 3 hours since the problem occurred in the G-size secret room. The news from above is that King is very angry. After all, a big shot died on the island this time. This is very important to the island. The blow to the island's reputation was very fatal. In the past, everyone treated these prey as beings like kittens and puppies, torturing and playing with them. In the many years since the island has established a playground, this is the first time that a prey has turned against them. The hunter killed him and escaped from the island, which was very detrimental to King's prestige. Mr. Casual has extraordinary strength. He has been a mercenary for many years, and now he is in the arms sales business. He is very skilled. Many guards on the island may not be his match, but an ordinary woman who was chosen took his hand. Life shows how powerful this woman is. Lily's escape made many people who came to play on the island panic. Many old players know the strength of Mr. Casual. If the prey cannot be caught after escaping, it will also have an impact on the island's business. Yes, the guests would be worried about their own safety. The man who left before was afraid that something would happen here, so he left in a hurry. 3 hours have passed. If Lily can't be caught again, it will prove that the guards on the island are incompetent, and more people will leave by then. The guests are not in bad luck, but it may be these incompetent guards who bear the wrath of King. Thinking of this, the faces of several people holding dogs showed fear. In the past, it was okay to watch the captured prey die. Everyone was already accustomed to death and blood, but it didn't mean that these people were used to handling other people's corpses, so they would like to die in the hands of King. As soon as the man who asked what to do finished speaking, everyone fell silent. The person must be found now. The superiors will not accept the reason they said that the person is missing. If the person is still not found before dawn, the business on the island will be affected. I am afraid the superiors will use them to feed the dogs alive. Several people shivered excitedly, with a look of fear on their faces when they looked at the leashed dogs. These dogs look extremely ferocious, precisely because these dogs usually eat processed prey carcasses, have violent tempers, and are not afraid of people. What King said about finding no one to feed them to dogs was not just a random statement. Instead of waiting for death at that time, it would be better. The author has something to say that Tencent girls can't see. Please vote. Today we will add an update and ask for votes. Little fairies, if we get 150 votes today, we will add an update, and we will add another 3,000 words. I will upload 2 updates first. Looking forward to welcoming you all. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1289. Lead the dog over and try, the leading man gritted his teeth. It was impossible for a living person to disappear out of thin air. You would have to try to find out. After hearing what he said, several people nodded in relief. The dogs could no longer control themselves. They grinned and barked fiercely. If their necks were not tied, they would have already started thrashing around. After a while, they were led towards the gates on the left and right sides. The group of people split into 2 halves. There was no news coming from the left side, but from the right side. Before they got close to the power grid, the dog suddenly barked crazily. It's really here. The leading man looked complicated. After finding Lily's whereabouts, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It's good if they have the whereabouts. As long as they look for it slowly, they will always find it. It would be better than not having this. It's much better to do nothing when the prey is gone. It's just that the long power line is so wide and long that except for cars, other things can't get in at all. Someone couldn't help but ask. How did she get in? No one here was burned to a crisp, but there was a gray dot in the distance. Someone took a flashlight and looked at it. It was about the size of a palm. Even the people who escaped were burned to ashes. And it is impossible that there are only such few traces left. The leading man gritted his teeth and frowned. Did someone turn off the circuit? It's about the safety of the villa. How could anyone dare to turn off the high voltage circuit here? But if the circuit is not turned off, it doesn't make sense. Try, the receiver in the leader's ear rang. After talking to the person on the other end for a few words, he waved his hand and made a decision. The voltage here is not turned off, but it cannot be ruled out that there is a problem with the voltage. Otherwise, it cannot explain why the prey escaped from this road. The only way to prove it is to step on it and give it a try. Everyone did not dare to say anything when they heard this. The leading man glanced at everyone with a gloomy look. Wherever he looked, everyone lowered their heads and avoided his eyes. After a few seconds he looked away. He sneered twice, "We are not sure if we don't try. If we can't catch her, we will all die." As soon as he said these words, the rest of the people were all shaken up. Then the man's eyes fell on the dog he was holding. The dog grinned and showed a fierce look. At this time, he felt the man's gaze on it. The dog even laid half of its body down, as if it was going to attack him. These dogs are fed on human flesh after being tortured and killed. They are extremely ferocious and have no fear of anyone. Once they are angered, they will most likely attack themselves. The man at the head was so angry at the dog that he sneered twice. Cursed. Bullshit. It's just you. He forced the dog to go towards the high voltage circuit, but animals are inherently sensitive to these dangerous things. The dog refused to go and barked more fiercely. It stared at him in warning. The man raised his handgun and shot the dog in the head. Amidst the wailing screams of the dogs, the group of dogs suddenly barked like crazy. Others quickly led the dogs and left quickly to prevent these things from going crazy. Then everyone will attack. The leading man threw the shot dog into the circuit. Amidst the sizzling sound, the still twitching dog was suddenly shrunk into a ball by the electric shock, and then its fur caught fire for a minute. His skin and flesh were torn apart by the electric shock. In this situation, it is obvious that there is no problem with the circuit, but since there is no problem with the circuit, and Lily's last scent disappeared in front of the circuit. There was no trace on the front, back, left, or right side. Where did she go? Everyone was a little angry, but at this time Lily had already entered the so-called Western District Villa. There were many more cameras and sensors outside. I don't know if it was because she and the other people in the iron cage escaped tonight. The reason is that there are important guests here. This villa has far more guards than the previous secret room. She carefully avoids the cameras. There is a huge swimming pool in front of the entrance of the villa complex. At this time, there are many people standing on the edge. There was an old man soaking in the pool with his hands naked. Under the light, the old man's eyes were sinister. Several women dressed as maids were massaging and washing him. Escaped. The old man's voice was hoarse and he frowned. Is there anyone in your place who can escape? He grinned, and the skin on his upper body was covered with wrinkles. Several women carefully cleaned him, looking nervous. Tell Mike to come and pick me up. After the old man finished asking, he saw the person in charge here nodded awkwardly, and immediately sat up and pushed away the woman who was sitting obediently next to him. He said gloomily. Beside the swimming pool, there was a young man in a tuxedo who was a little anxious when he heard this. "Mr. Eagle, you should believe in King's strength. The prey cannot escape here, and your identity will certainly not be exposed. Please feel free to play." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man opened his mouth and suddenly laughed. "Believe in King's strength, random is because you believed too much, and that's why you died here. I'm old, and I can't stand the torment better than young people." The news that Mr. Random was killed by prey in the secret room and several people escaped has spread throughout the island. When the young man in tuxedo heard the words of the sinister-looking old man, his eyes showed anxiety. Color. He secretly cursed this old man in his heart for being a mature man and a good judge of eyes. It had only been less than 3 hours since the incident happened, but just based on the atmosphere on the island and the previous notice he had received from the superiors telling him to be careful, he could only say a few words. Among them, the news about Mr. Casual's accident was revealed. Then things expanded step by step. If he leaves the island today, the people living here will definitely get the news. So far, some people have left the island. If more people leave one after another, the impact on the island will be fatal. Everyone knows what kind of dirty deeds everyone is doing. Although the people who can come here have not revealed their real names, most of them are people with extraordinary status in the world. Once there is a prey for the evil deeds on the island, if you escape, you can imagine how big the storm will be. The superiors have already sent people to capture the escapees and ask them to try their best to keep these guests, otherwise once they leave this time, it is unlikely that these people will come back again. Mr. Eagle, something did happen on the island. What happened this time was beyond our expectations. As for the incident of Mr. Random, you can trust us and it will never happen again. How protected is this place? Chiang, you should know this, otherwise you won't live here every time you come here. As soon as the young man in the tuxedo said these words, the expression on the old man's face softened slightly, but his expression was still very ugly. Fortunately, he didn't mention that he must leave immediately. The young man breathed a sigh of relief, with a smile on his face. And since the incident happened, the island has sent armed forces to arrest those people. So far, 5 people have died and their bodies have been disposed of. Only one person was lucky enough to escape. After he finished speaking, he paused. But the superiors have sent people to track her again, and now we have her whereabouts, so you can rest assured. This townhouse has always been the most heavily guarded. It was not the first time for the old man to come to this island, and he knew this very well. There were a large number of people guarding the door, and only cars could enter from the left and right sides. I heard that 5 of the people who escaped were dead, and only one person escaped, and the people who escaped were already being hunted on the island. Although the old man was very concerned about his life safety, he still smiled and nodded. Nodded. He did not mention leaving again, and the smile on the young man's face in the tuxedo grew stronger. So Mr. Eagle is going to enter the game now. Lily hid behind the large plants next to the swimming pool, and her expression did not change at all when she heard that the other people who had escaped from the iron cage had all died on the island. In fact, she had already guessed that this might be the result. That group of people were too timid. When the car was punctured before, they were not willing to escape with their legs, and instead trusted in the car. Although the car ran fast, the island people above were not familiar with the place, and they didn't want to think about it. Although the car was fast, it made a lot of noise when driving, which easily attracted other people's attention. As long as they found their car, it would be very easy to kill this group of people. On the contrary, in the end, everyone runs his own way, and has a better chance of winning. But human beings have always been social animals, and they instinctively believe that there is strength in numbers. 2 of the people in this group were injured and smelled of blood. The guard on the island who captured everyone also took the dog. In fact, whether driving or relying on 2 hands, legs running away, these people cannot escape. It's just that although Lily knew that these people would die, when she actually heard the news, she still hated this island even more. The old man soaking in the swimming pool was still talking to the young man in tuxedo. When he heard him asking whether he could enter the game, the old man grinned. "Don't worry, I've been in the bath for a long enough time. As we get older, our energy wears off quickly after swimming for 2 laps, and we get hungry." When he said this, several beautiful women who were bathing for him by the pool listened. After saying this, his face suddenly turned pale, and his whole body began to tremble. "Since we're not leaving, let's stop playing games and let's eat first." The old man said this with a smile, but the eyes of the women who were waiting for him were all filled with fear. The young man in the tuxedo breathed a sigh of relief, finally letting the old man stay. As long as the old man doesn't say he wants to leave, then he can do anything. The young man in the tuxedo was obviously very familiar with the old man. He nodded after hearing his words, his eyes fell on these women, his eyelids drooped, and he asked respectfully, "Who does Mr. Eagle have his eye on? Please give me monthly votes. If you vote over 150 today, more updates will be added. It's the end of the month, don't save any more tickets, leave everything to me for safekeeping. You won't be disappointed. To be continued. Carrot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1290. After the young man in the tuxedo asked, he said to himself, "Everyone here is carefully selected and has a very clean body." When he introduced the girl, his eyes did not seem to be ambiguous, but rather to say no. He looked so indifferent, as if the people in front of him were just a group of animals. A group of girls trembled even more violently. Mr. Eagle smiled and touched the shivering girl next to him, and narrowed his eyes. "Silly boy, what are you afraid of? This is your honor, to be eaten by me. Hit. Ha ha ha." After he finished speaking, he laughed loudly. The girls shook even more, obviously not interested in his joke. The man in the tuxedo laughed along with him. Mr. Eagle had enough fun, and then he pushed the girl he had just hugged out. "It's her." The girl staggered due to his push and fell into the water. She drank some water and choked, and when she stood up, several burly men were already standing by the pool waiting for her. The other women breathed a sigh of relief. The chosen girl cried as if it was the end of the world, "Please sir, please don't choose me. Take it away." The man in the tuxedo stopped his smile and ordered in a cold voice to the big men next to him. After a few big men nodded, he looked coldly at the girl in the pool who was still begging and crying, and turned to look. When he looked at the old man, he changed his face to a smile. "Sir, please get up slowly. I will prepare the food for you personally and wait for you to go back to your room." After he finished speaking, amid the screams of the girl in the pool, he grabbed her onto the shore and carried her away. The faces of those who stayed were as pale as vegetables, and their teeth were chattering. Lily hid in the dark and saw this scene. He pursed his lips. Although the man in the tuxedo left, there were many people staying by the swimming pool, and she could vaguely feel that there were many people staring at her. The hair on her back was growing cold, and the sense of crisis never subsided. She glanced at the smiling old man in the pool, and left the place quietly. Mr. Eagle didn't know that he had just killed Mr. Casual. The prey wanted on the island has appeared here before. Lily bypassed the surveillance camera and followed the man in the tuxedo. He led the crying woman into a villa. Although it was already night, the villa was still brightly lit and full of surveillance cameras. Lily hesitated for a moment, and instead of entering through the floor-to-ceiling glass door of the villa like the man in the tuxedo, he went around to the back of the villa. There is a small rooftop above the head. Other than that, there are no windows behind the villa. The rooftop is about 80 to 90 meters above the ground. You can enter the villa from the rooftop. For ordinary people, if there is nothing on the outer wall that is enough for half a foot to fall, it would be a dream to climb 80 to 90 meters without the aid of tools. But for Lily, this is not a problem. The back of the villa is not completely flat, but has some relief-like shapes. People on the island think that it is very safe. There are many people defending the old man's position in front, but there are only a few people behind the villa. Apart from the cameras, there are no guards on duty. Lily stretched out her hand and touched the rough stone bricks, using her spiritual power with her fingers. The stone was broken by her, and she gripped the wall tighter with her fingers. The legs rubbed together. His body jumped up flexibly and lightly. Entering the building in this way was a bit tiring and consumed a lot of spiritual energy, but it was still fast. In less than 5 minutes, her palms had reached the edge of the rooftop. She turned over in the night and jumped up easily. Lily did not rush from the rooftop to the downstairs. Instead, she practiced physical skills for a while to replenish some of the spiritual power in her body, then waved her hands and feet, and then moved toward the entrance to the rooftop. There is a glass door here, which has been locked from the inside to the outside. Lily hides at the corner and looks through the glass door. Inside is a very spacious lounge. It is designed in the same way as the room style. The door is a sliding design. It is not locked. In other words, the only thing she needs to open now is the glass door. The glass door uses a smart lock, which means that whether you enter from the inside or the outside, you need to swipe your iris or fingerprint to unlock it. In addition, if anyone else touches the lock, it will trigger an alarm. Lily looked at the computer control panel aside. In fact, she was more inclined to break the glass door and force entry, but this would definitely attract the attention of people here. She reached out and touched the frame of the glass door. In fact, besides breaking the glass and unlocking the door, she had another way, which was to dismantle the entire door frame. Although the glass door was strong and heavy, it was not a big problem for Lily. She took out a weapon from her waist, pried the door frame out a little, used her spiritual power in her hands, and quickly the glass door was peeled off the track with a clang. Although there was some noise, it was not loud. This was the top floor of the rooftop. Lily paused for a while and found that no one was paying attention to this place. She then took down the glass door on the other side and removed the glass door at the same time. The two doors were pushed aside. The lights were turned on in the room. She entered the room and pushed open the door to the Japanese room. Outside was a passage winding down. The lights above her head were dim. I wonder if it was because of the filthiness of this place. No matter how luxurious the decoration was, it still felt, Lily had a dark feeling of extreme decay. She walked down the stairs cautiously, and she was afraid that there would be guards with guns below, so she walked cautiously all the way. When you come downstairs from the rooftop, you will see extremely wide entertainment rooms on both sides of the next floor. The rooms are similar to the secret rooms Lily escaped from before, and are filled with all kinds of torture instruments. Lily grabbed a few sharp and compact daggers for later use. Coming out of the entertainment room, there is a huge platform outside, with a hollow fence next to it. Looking through the fence, downstairs is the large living room that opens up the top floor. It is about 6 or 7 meters high and is richly decorated, with a huge crystal chandelier. The whole living room was illuminated brilliantly. At this time, a huge dining table was placed below, and there was a stove next to it. There was a grill on top. Several pieces of meat on the shelf were sizzling with aroma. Next to it was a woman who was already covered in blood, her eyes bulging out, and a look of pain on her beautiful face. It was obvious that she could not survive much longer. "Don't eat it, it's tasteless." The old man Lily saw before was wearing a silk nightgown and wiping his mouth with a handkerchief. The woman who was about to die was the one he had chosen before. Not only the prey will be tortured and killed here, but some women who serve on the island are even targets of torture and murder. No wonder the women looked so frightened when they were selected just now. Do you know when the quality of this meat is best? If you want it alive, it will be tasteless when it is dead. It is best alive, fresh and tender, and then put on seasonings. The old man said, squinting his eyes, and his face showed the color of enjoyment. The expressions of the people downstairs were numb, obviously they were used to his behavior. Lily's eyes showed murderous intent. Everyone on the island was so disgusting. She had not been so angry for a long time. There were only two burly men standing in the hall downstairs, and one was waiting for the old man's meal. Waiter, although she didn't want to alert the snake, it was really disgusting. The woman didn't know what was going on. At this time, she was not dead, but was living in pain. Guns cannot be used here, otherwise once others are alerted, a large number of people will be attracted. Lily closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she took out the dagger from her waist and tried the feel. Two burly men were standing opposite her in a corner, one was below her, and the other was standing behind her. Opposite, the dagger in her hand was aimed at the man's neck, and Lily threw it out with a swish sound. Before the people downstairs could react, the bodyguard opposite was suddenly penetrated by a dagger in his neck. The force of Lily's throw even caused him to take 2 or 3 steps back after the dagger penetrated his neck. Finally the tip of the dagger that passed through his neck hit the wall with a clang, and the man's eyes widened, and his hand instinctively touched his neck, where the handle of the dagger had already penetrated his neck, and he only touched one. There was a blood hole, and blood slowly flowed from it. His trachea was cut, and he couldn't even scream. He kicked his legs desperately, scratched his neck with his hands, and sat down on the ground. At the same time, Lily jumped down from the balcony and just sat on the neck of another bodyguard. At this time, the man only felt that his slender and straight legs were like scissors, clamping his neck, and with a strong attack, he hearing the click sound when his throat was broken, the man fell softly and even died faster than the previous bodyguard whose neck was penetrated. All this happened in a flash of lightning. The old man hadn't even put down the handkerchief in his hand. His eyes widened, and his gloomy face didn't even have time to show panic. Because the old man doesn't allow too many people to watch when he's eating. He doesn't like people looking at him like a devil, so he usually has to be guarded by bodyguards when he's eating. But he didn't expect these two people to be so useless. Even before they were able to face each other, they lost their mobility one after another. The waiter opened his mouth to scream, but Lily's figure was like the wind, coming around behind him, grabbing his hair, making a fist with one hand, and hitting his face with a bang sound. This punch was filled with spiritual power, and it shattered the waiter's cheekbone with one punch. The young waiter didn't even say a word, and the skin on his face cracked like dry land, releasing a large amount of chine. The blood fell softly to the ground. I solemnly ask everyone for monthly votes. There is still the last day. I really want to keep the 4th place this month. The monthly votes in your hands will be invalid if you don't vote this month. If you still have monthly votes, please vote for me. Tears, please everyone. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1291. The barbecue tongs originally held in his hand also fell to the ground with a clang. The old man didn't come back to his senses until now. He was about to scream loudly when Lily sneered at him, grabbed his hair, and held his other hand. She removed his jaw cleanly with a click sound. Her movements were not gentle, but rather malicious, causing the old man's open-mouthed scream to turn into a painful groan. "Does the barbecue taste good?" she asked, and the old man struggled desperately. "I'll give you money." Before he finished speaking, Lily looked at the poor woman on the dining table, narrowed her eyes, grabbed him, pointed it at the oven that was still burning nearby, held the back of his head, and killed him with one blow. He pressed his face. "Money is not everything," she said this calmly. Amidst the sound of the barbecue, the old man could not open his mouth to scream. The smell of the barbecue was very burnt. When it came, he was still grabbing desperately with both hands, and the muscles all over his body suddenly became extremely tight. His feet were still kicking, but he couldn't scream. "Now, do you still like barbecue?" Lily asked, but the old man was speechless. She pressed the button for 2 or 3 minutes, and the smell of paste mixed with the stench of incontinence after death came. The body under her hand no longer struggled, and then she pressed the button for 2 or 3 minutes. As soon as the hand pressing on the old man's head was released, the old man's body slid down weakly. His face had been burnt black, and his facial features could no longer be seen, as if his face had been flattened by an iron. She looked at it coldly. He glanced at the old man's body and then looked at the woman on the dining table. She hadn't yet breathed her last, and she was like a scaled fish, gasping for air with her mouth open. She didn't know what these beast-like things on the island had done to her. She couldn't survive, but she hadn't died yet, but it was obvious that she couldn't survive, and Lily couldn't save her at all. She stared at Lily pleadingly. Lily walked up to the big man whose neck had been pierced by a dagger, took her dagger back, and when she walked past the dining table, the waiter had not yet completely breathed his last. She stepped on the waiter's head, and with a bang sound, the man who was struggling slightly before was soon reduced to instinctive twitching. "I can't save you." After she said that, she put the dagger back in her waist. In fact, the only thing she could do for this poor woman was to relieve her pain and let her die faster. There were tears in the woman's eyes, and her eyes revealed the desire for survival. "But there will be no one on the island to treat her, she is dead." Lily said softly, "I'm sorry." When the words fell, the woman's eyes showed a complicated look, but also a look of relief. Lily held her head with both hands and twisted it hard, and the woman's pupils quickly dilated. Lily wiped her eyelids down, covering her eyes that had not been dimmed yet. "Judging from the current situation, Mr. Eagle has been dining here for a certain period of time. At most half an hour, someone will find something wrong and knock on the door. It may not even take half an hour." She didn't have much time. Lily's eyes were on the various spices aside. The old man had a complete set of ingredients for his food. He had many rare things. Lily mixed them all. He took off the waiter's clothes and picked up the spices. "Jump upstairs very quickly. There is a door in the entertainment room upstairs that connects to other places." Lily quickly sprinkled some spices on every place. She knew that the people on the island were already chasing her with dogs. Dogs have bigger noses than humans. Sensitive. She can evade the monitors, but she may not be able to evade these dogs with sensitive noses. But these spices can help her. Lily took these spices and sprinkled them everywhere, at least to delay the pursuit of these people for a while. She sprinkled the entertainment room with spices, and the door of the entertainment room was locked. She shattered the lock and opened the door. Pushing open, the next door has almost the same decoration. The reason for this design is probably that the people on the island designed it to satisfy these perverts who sometimes want to communicate with each other. If anyone wants to play together, then they can open the door and it becomes a place. There is a huge torture cell-like existence. If he doesn't want others to disturb his fun, then he can lock the door so that others can't see their movements. There was no one next door, but the townhouse occupied a large area, so the lock design was still the same. She sprinkled the room with the same spices again, and was about to shake the lock again, but her hand just touched it. The door lock just made a soft sound, but a sinister male voice warned from next door, "Who?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly seemed to have thought of something, opened his mouth and shouted suddenly, "Someone is coming. There is someone next door." When Lily heard this voice, she couldn't help but cursed. It was conceivable that there should be a hunter next door tonight, and by coincidence, the torture cell was being used. He should know if there was anyone next door tonight. This person's reaction, his strength was also very fast. He first uttered a question and soon realized that there was no one next door. He already realized that something was wrong, so he immediately started shouting for help. At this time, Lily hadn't broken the door, but the man had already gone downstairs quickly. The sound of opening the door was heard, and someone also started to open the door downstairs. The sound of rapid footsteps sounded, and Lily cursed, and walked from the original route. She retreated, but soon she found that people were coming to Mr. Eagle's room at the beginning. She could only go along the roof again, where the door had been broken by her, so she jumped up to the top floor and started running from the rooftop to the other side. Footsteps were heard from downstairs. The attention of the entire villa area had been attracted to her, and most of the armed forces rushed towards the villa area. Found the target person, Lily could hear people saying this from everywhere. On the other end, 10 minutes after she entered the villa, the guards at the entrance on the right side of the gate had already kicked the half-dead dog that was shot by the leading man into the electric grid. The dog was quickly electrocuted to death. The cracked flesh proves that the high-voltage power grid in this place is not broken. The group of pursuers were surprised and a little embarrassed for a moment. The power grid is not broken, but where did the escaped prey go? The smell has been cut off here, and there is no trace of her. The electricity here is enough to make her lose her life in an instant. This is really strange. The leading man picked up the communicator unwillingly. He had to step on the power grid to check exactly where this woman had gone. He didn't believe that someone could fly into the sky and escape from the earth. If he couldn't find the person today, I'm afraid his body would have to be fed to the dogs tomorrow. He called the person in charge of security in the villa and asked them to temporarily turn off the power grid in the right passage. After receiving the exact news that all high-voltage power lines had turned off, the leading man hesitated for a moment and then signaled for someone to pull a ferocious dog into the power grid. The dog refused to go at first, but after he was forcibly pulled up, when he stepped on it, all the electricity was indeed turned off. The man was relieved that the dog was alive and kicking, and the remaining people scrambled to pull the dog onto the electric fence. Woof woof woof, these dogs began to scream wildly and desperately. This performance proved that the prey had indeed passed by and entered the villa. Several people's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They simply couldn't believe this conclusion. Except for the special tires that can pass through these high-voltage power grids, it is impossible for ordinary shoe soles to insulate these things. How on earth did this woman do it? Just pass through this power grid? Could it be that she really has the ability to fly into the sky and escape from the earth? At this time, a group of people had some shadows in their hearts about chasing Lily. The dog was still barking desperately, and the leading man's face was gloomy. Although he was mentally prepared for the possibility of failure on this errand, he still had to do what he was supposed to do. He pressed the headphones in his ears and warned, "The prey has entered the key range. Warning, the prey has entered the key range. Please pay attention. Beep, beep, prey was found." Before the man finished his third warning, someone on the other end of the communicator started to remind loudly in a more urgent voice than him. Apparently, the prey was found in the villa area. This news reached the ears of every tracking team leading the dog through the earphones. Everyone looked at each other and laughed bitterly in unison. 3 words flashed in their minds at the same time: damn it! The high-voltage power grid here is obviously open, but how could a woman enter the villa from here without anyone noticing? Everyone just felt that it was extremely tricky. The target person had entered a key area. Everyone could imagine that after the news came out, how furious there will be above. No one can get into trouble in key areas. Once someone gets into trouble, I'm afraid many people will have to be buried with them. Now everyone just prays that the higher UPS won't blame themselves and others. After all, this kind of thing, it's really something I've never seen before in my life. Let's go. A group of people led the dog and ran into the villa area. At this time, the entire key area became lively. Lily's whereabouts have been discovered, the sound of sirens and the sound of people running are heard, mixed with the sound of dogs barking closer and closer. Although Lily was hiding on the roof, she couldn't help but feel heavy at this moment. But the more critical the situation is, the less she can mess up. She should not have been discovered now. In fact, these people will find her sooner or later with their dogs. Now they just discovered her target in advance, anyway. We've already been discovered, so we might as well take the chance and take a gamble. Please vote for me, please vote for me. There are still 3 updates today. To be continued.